Thank you much. I was a last-minute addition. A friend of mine, a professor from AU, couldn't attend, so he asked me to come. So I was luckily able to gather some statistics at the last minute, and since we're on an education panel, I figured I'd pull out some statistics which may or may not prompt any of the panelists, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. So according to the State Department and Institute for International Education, Saudi Arabia is the fourth largest source of foreign students studying the USA after China, India, and South Korea. And at 5%, it's actually, there's twice as many Saudi students in the U.S. as Mexican students. The populations of Saudi and Kuwaiti students studying in the U.S. is growing at over 30%. Kuwait is actually at 37%, the fastest two growing student groups in the U.S. So I just wanted to bring these facts to light to show that there's many ways in the United States that have not been tapped yet in our own local communities for interaction among Arab and American student groups. And I saw this myself at American University. Some of the older groups like Palestinians or Lebanese may be more assimilated into American culture, but the Saudis and other groups tend to still be in smaller cliques. So this brings me to the introduction of our panel, who have all in some way contributed to innovative ways of creating new ways for engagement among Arab and American populations. I'm just going to give a short description of their bios and prompt them with a question. Pierre Dulaine, to my left, is a world-renowned dance teacher. You should all go on and see the clip of Antonio Banderas in Take the Lead, which portrays Dulaine using his dance teaching skills to teach youth to believe in their abilities and reinforcing self-esteem through teaching others to dance. His 2013 documentary, Dancing in Jaffa, is a story teaching Jewish and Palestinian Israeli students to dance together. And that's also some YouTube clips. It's very good. Down at the end, we have Casey Jennings, who's the co-founder of the documentary group and also the impetus behind the March 2013 Girl Rising, which we had another panelist earlier who was the executive director. But if no one has heard, if you haven't heard of this yet, it's really good. It's a groundbreaking documentary showing some of the common issues faced by girls and women in developing cultures around the world. And it highlights individual profiles of women who have risen above their circumstances, and it shows their lives in that part of their life. Her work really is a visual representation that humanizes and emotionalizes some of the critical issues faced by groups of women, especially in the Arab world, but in developing cultures everywhere. Chris Blute is the head of Global Nomads Group, which has been around since 1996, I just learned, which is amazing. And it fosters international dialogue amongst youth using interactive media. So I'm sure you've been through the evolution of different media forms. And he's been recognized especially for his work in developing media programs in over 40 countries, especially Sub-Saharan and East Africa. And then finally, Ms. Toni Verstandig, who is the only panelist I knew before coming up somewhat, who is a recognized expert, and I've learned from her myself on the Middle East region. She was former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs and is a recognized source of expertise on the Arabian Peninsula. And I know her work personally through the North African Partnership for Economic Opportunity, which brings together groups of students for discussions in places like Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. And she just told me that she had some discussions recently with Secretary Kerry on building on this initiative in the region. So these are our panelists, and I guess we can get it started off with just a general prompt question for Mr. Dulaine, which is, because you are one of these ones who's using what's not thought of as a traditional format, which is dance, you know, what kinds of teachers could use this format, and what does innovation in storytelling formats mean for educators?
Well, for me, one part of education, of course, you can teach children 2 + 2 and science, etc., etc. But through my life's experience, and having been a foreigner born in Jaffa and Palestine and living in England and living in America and being made fun of as a child, Ballroom dancing gave me my personality, if you want to say, made me stand up, to be very confident of myself. And so I think of myself now as an educator of the human touch. Now, when you dance with someone and you touch someone with respect, something happens. You get to know that person in a very, very different way. We can play tennis against each other, with each other, but I don't get to know you as if I touch you, dancing with you. There's a give and take. There is so much that goes on. You suddenly become human. You suddenly get to know about that culture, about the feeling of that person. You suddenly become compassionate, and this is all through touch. And of course, we work with children that are 10, 11 years old and 14-year-olds. So it is before we think of giving them what we call life skills that become very, very useful for them as they grow into society. For me, this is so unique that you just don't get that in schools. So this is why our program, Dancing Classrooms, really works with the children in their during their school day. So the whole class must go en masse. And the wonderful thing is, this Dancing Classrooms program is going all over the world. We are in Jordan, we're in Israel, where such things didn't become. I mean, because they do Middle Eastern dancing, but not touch dancing. And so this is, for me, what bridged my upbringing from the Middle East. My father was Irish, my mother was Catholic Palestinian, and coming to England, they made fun of me. But this, made me somebody that I'm very, very proud of at the moment, and I'm glad to have had the success I've had so far.
Has there been a great distinction in the reaction you've gotten in different countries, whether you perform it in Europe or the Middle East or America?
Well, this is what's wonderful about Bridges of Understanding, is that kids are kids are kids are kids. They all want to ride a bicycle. They all want to shape what their mama gave them. It's just giving them permission to do it in a respectful way. So for me, when I say unfortunately, it is not unfortunate, because something that I respect very much, I'm sure everyone else on the panel will as well, in education, is respect the religious background of the culture. And so in ballroom dancing, it's not such an easy thing to do in the Middle East, but the whole world is getting smaller, and we are becoming closer and closer knit. The internet is what we're talking about all morning. So they see other people dancing together. This is something they might want to do. And so for me, it starts off always with a few brave ones to start breaking the ice. And then slowly it's like a ripple effect in the water. It will go off. So so everyone should dance.
So let me ask, Tony, what are, this is carrying on some of the North Africa work that you've done, what are some of the non-traditional means, meaning as opposed to, I guess, just forums in person, that you're using to reach new audiences, say, in North Africa?
Well, first of all, let me thank our colleagues and friends at Bridges of Understanding, especially Samia Faruqi, for her leadership, for also helping us assemble what I call a toolbox of collaboration. So it's not just Bridges of Understanding, it's the Aspen Institute, it's World Rising, it's Global Nomads, and it's all of us working together in a region that is so full of hope and promise and opportunity. For me, I look at the greater Middle East and as a region of extraordinary opportunity, and I'm passionate about those opportunities. Marwan and Kareem and Marlene are sitting in this audience, those of us who've been working on these issues for a long time, and we'll probably continue to work on them for a long time. But I think we are at an important pivot point, and for me, it is that collaboration and synergy of impact on the ground. So as you talk about whether it's the previous panel addressed the issue of theater and arts and culture, and I have to tell you, the Aspen Institute last summer we hosted and conducted, I moderated several panels on Girls Rising. It is a profoundly moving documentary, and I'm looking at, we're actually going to use it in an Indonesia context and also in several settings in North Africa. But it can't just be one-off, because the region will not allow us to do one-off either convenings or conversations. It's about the execution of ideas and having impactful programs on the ground. And it is taking, whether it's theater, dance, or there was a previous reference to cooking. You know, CNN did a program on the unique cooking of the Palestinians, both Gaza and the West Bank, that was just extraordinary. But the cooking for me was about the role of women. And it is about empowering women, which is what you touch on. When you educate women, you give them a role in society. You give them, they pay back the economics of women who are educated. The numbers speak for themselves, and they become stakeholders in society. Young girls are not married at the age of 10, 12, 13. They go on and finish high school and sometimes have the opportunity of going to college, but they also create opportunities to have jobs. Those jobs are, you know, we talk about, and I'm passionate about, as everyone knows, the technology opportunities of the region, and our colleague Chris Schroeder, whom we've done a lot of convenings with, who's written a fantastic book on the entrepreneurial spirit in the Middle East. What's happening in the subtext of the region is that for the first time you're seeing new ideas bubbling to the top, and technology and ideas are saying, we're not going to wait. We are going to drive through the obstacles, whether they are political obstacles or economic obstacles. We are not going to continue to sort of be boxed in by the definition of insanity. We're going to do things differently. And either you're on board with us, or we're going to drive to a new agenda. And you're seeing it. Young people are really, they have found their voice. They've found their place in the public square. So for us, we're constantly looking to assemble those multiple tools in that toolbox. And you asked me what we're doing in North Africa. I was just with Madeleine Albright in Istanbul, and we convened multiple players from Palestine, from Jordan, from across the region, but we also had the opportunity to do a convening of multiple stakeholders from Libya. Everyone hears about Libya and what's happening, and we had the tragic death of a young teacher from Benghazi, and robbed of his hope and promise and dreams. And yet you have a subtext of Libyan ministers saying, we won't accept this. We are going to have convene a national dialogue. We are going to figure out how we're going to establish a security framework. And in Istanbul, we had two visionary ministers, we didn't even know they were going to come, together with the private sector, both young people and what I call seasoned private sector, established in Libya, sitting around the table for the first time. And our ambassador was also there, our ambassador to Libya, and it was the beginning of a conversation on the national dialogue. And it was very moving, and it was something we intend to continue to pursue. So these are tools that we're trying to pursue, and they can only be pursued in a meaningful way with collaboration and thinking outside the box. So I want to thank Bridges for giving us an opportunity to collaborate and find new tools for thinking outside the box. Our colleagues at Global Nomads, in terms of what they're doing on 2.0, is we've been working very closely with them in terms of leveraging educational opportunities.
Great. Thank you for that. I think it's very important, too, to draw attention to the convening power that the United States has, and a lot of the groups in America may not realize that the convening power we have to bring together a forum for open dialogue is powerful and not as well utilized or understood, I guess, throughout the rest of the region. But so speaking of, images from the region and the role of women, KC has done some great work with Girl Rising, and when I watched the clip on YouTube of the young Egyptian girl speaking to, I don't know if it was a policeman or something, just that portrayal was even unheard of 10 or 15 years ago. I took Arabic at Georgetown, and anyone who took it knows about Maha and the Egyptian colloquial and the caricatures of women in these societies. So it's amazing to see true profiles bubbling up through these societies. So.
Well, for those who haven't seen the film, it tells, Holly mentioned it a little earlier before, but it tells 9 stories of 9 girls in countries around the world. And the story that takes place in Egypt is about sexual violence, and it's a young girl who was assaulted, but she sees herself as a superhero, and that's how she deals with it. That, of course, we were, as Holly mentioned, the actual girl was not seen at all. Those were actors. That was a young actress, and everyone else were actors as well, because it wasn't possible for her to be on screen. As Tony said, the issue of girls' education is just so huge, and the metrics are so important. And we did this when we discovered the stuff that all you guys know already, the simple and elegant and very, very clear truth that if you educate girls, all sorts of great things happen, and it has enormous impact for all of us. Yes, I'm sorry, and it has enormous impact for all of us everywhere. Also, as Holly mentioned earlier, the internet, to get back a little bit to what we were talking about, has been a huge factor for us as we've tried. This film is merely the central tool of what we hope is a much bigger campaign. And we have tried to use social media and the internet throughout the campaign, both in terms of outreach, but also to create a conversation. So, for example, on International Day of the Girl, we called for events around the world. There were over 2,000 of them. The things that have come back from those events, girls in Ghana who all wrote Girl Rising poetry and then marched through the streets of their town with Girl Rising t-shirts. That's now on the internet. A 13-year-old boy named Josh in Australia has arranged a number of screenings, and he's created 2 videos about girls' education, which he's posted on YouTube. Another girl saw the film, and she has created paintings for her senior thesis in school of the Girl Rising girls, and has sold the first for $1,000 and has contributed that towards. So that was sort of our first phase, was getting it out there, getting the film out there. A very important part of our next phase is the more direct educational component. We have a curriculum that has been designed by the Pearson Foundation that's free online, as are a couple of the chapters of the film. And we consider that very, very important, and the fact that it's online is incredibly important to us because we hope to achieve 2 things. One, to disseminate it as widely as possible, and we hope, though the curriculum is not yet translated, the chapters are translated into 18 languages so far. But we hope to be able to translate the curriculum as well. But at least English-speaking teachers can take it into their communities now. The challenge is, of course, that many of the communities we want to get into don't have access to the internet. So we have to find ways of bringing perhaps the educators together in a place where they can access it and proceed that way. The other thing we want to do very much is to create and enhance the conversation that goes on internationally and globally. And we think the educational community, the educator community, and the student community is a wonderful way to do that. Because ultimately, if we're going to change the world, we need to bring on all the young people and both raise their awareness and allow them to raise our awareness. And so I'm hoping that we will, as we expand our vision and as we have increased our capability and our partnerships, we've worked with Global Nomads, we've worked with Bridges of Understanding. I hope we'll do a lot more of that. But we hope to find new ways of reaching out into that community, and most importantly for me, new ways of creating that conversation. So that's where we're at now. We're about to release the educational DVD with a very hefty discussion guide that will go with that. We're looking at a college curriculum down the road. We're looking at some training, some ways of training educators. And all of that will have to be very involved with the internet, and I hope effectively so.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm going to prompt our last panelist who hasn't spoke yet, and I want to just prompt you with two questions. One is how is the Arab world portrayed, especially in younger age, middle school or high school, and what are the best mediums that you've used? Coming from 1996, I'm sure the way you've gotten your message out has evolved.
Yeah, I thought, thanks for having me. When you were mentioning about all of the Saudis and Kuwaitis who come to the U.S., I was curious about how many Americans go to Saudi and Kuwait. In terms of how the Middle East or the Arab world is perceived in U.S. classrooms, about a week ago I was in California, I was in middle school, and I did this exercise with the kids. I said, where do you get your information from? We talk about the internet, TV, newspapers, and it was basically how you receive information. I said, so what do you know about the Middle East? And we would put a list on the wall, or on the board. It was about oil, it was about rich, terrorism, Islam. These were the words that were coming up. And I said, so what do you think they think about you? Think about that same media that they're getting. Beverly Hills, celebrities, blondes, These were the ideas in which people were receiving via the different media in which they get. So I think that is still the narrative that young people are getting in the U.S. about the Arab world. It's around oil, being rich, terrorism, Islam. And for Global Nomads Group, we every day were linking young people face to face so they could break down those stereotypes and stigmas. And it's not going to be a physical exchange. It's not going to replace that. But only 1% of Americans are going to have a physical exchange in their education. So what about the other 99%? The other 99% are going to be getting information from media. And they're not going to be engaging in programs like Global Nomads Group, like what we're doing with Bridges of Understanding, with our Youth Talk program, which maybe it's not a physical exchange, but it's a touch. It's a touch that they wouldn't have had, and they could start breaking down and realizing, you know what? That kid plays the same sports as me, or listens to the same music, and you look beyond oil and money and Islam and terrorism, and you start humanizing each other. And I think that's what's exciting for us. We've been in this space since actually 1998, but still quite a long time. And I think our time has come. I think the technology has gotten to a place where you can actually have meaningful video conferences across borders. And I think that educators are ready for it. I think we're seeing a new group of teachers coming in who understand how to integrate this type of technology in the classroom. And I think it's a really exciting time, and I think that we need to take advantage of that.
Excellent, thank you. That was very good. So I will have one more prompt. I'm going to ask Ms. Verstandig. What so far in the region? What's been the best method for convening these groups? Traditional. Are you on the ground gathering information? Do you have, what would be the best way to for others to kind of copy the Aspen format in the region so that they could convene their own kind of meaningful discussions?
First of all, I don't think, if you heard what I said earlier, I think what we need to do now, it's more about collaboration and really not the one-off. I think we would all benefit from more synergy and engagement, number one. Number two, yes, you have to do some convenings on the ground. You cannot replace that. But I think the more we can do using technology and Skyping, and you can do that collaboratively, then you won't have these long periods of time where there is nothing happening, on the ground. So you can continue to push things through and have some regularizing your engagement. On the Global Nomads piece, I think that it is really critically important on the education piece, especially given what Bridges is doing, what we're trying to do in the education space, and what's happening with Global Nomads and Grow Rising, and also on the dance space, or whether it's theater. these are themes and threads that need to be reinforced and knitted together. And it's the cultural space. Let's remember, this region is a storytelling region. And it's a region rich in history and culture and storytelling. I think one of the most, and Samia, forgive me for referring back to personal experiences with you, but the richness of the art that and appreciation in both modern as well as historical is something that is, you know, I always keep in the back of my mind, how can I leverage that? Why am I not doing more with that? Why I need to do convenings, and the art is referenced now from a Gulf context because you're seeing more art and museums taking hold in Qatar as well as in the Emirates, also applicable to theater. I mean, I just went to an amazing exhibit in the Emirates, but bringing that here and having that, but also with a mentoring piece, so that you have the regularity of not just the exhibits, but the art piece. And Marlene's very involved with the National Women's Museum of the Arts here. And so it's something that's in the back of my mind, and how do you stitch these together to take advantage of this rich cultural, historical reference point, because I think that is something that is, as you move to the 21st century and new global partnerships, you always need to tether your past and do it in a way that creates, as I call, new stakeholders. And what Global Nomads has done that I'm so impressed with, and we're constantly trying to support and reinforce, especially with our colleagues at the State Department. How do you take that traditional Fulbright model, which is a very important model that we want to preserve and protect, but layer on this new model? So in our experience, it's the blending of the convening on the ground, but also trying to use these technology pieces that can help keep it. From my experience, it's the regularity, and it's the building of the relationships, and it's constantly reaching out to new partners.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the audience. We have one up here in the front. Maybe you can comment on that, how Facebook is affected. I think the question is how Facebook is maybe leveling the playing field a bit in the region on topics that are previously taboo.
I think there's a lot there. For us, I think it's great. There's a huge opportunity, but it could also go very wrong. If you could start watching Facebook posts around a certain issue, and if it's unmoderated, you could start having a lot of accusations back and forth. And if you're really getting nowhere, then you could actually be getting to a further place than you were before. And yes, I believe that Facebook allows for a new type of education, but there is education systems. There are ministries of education. And how do we work with those institutions that exist and get them to hopefully introduce new ideas? And what you said around critical thinking, at the end of the day, that's what's so important. It's to get these young people to have a plurality of perspectives and use their critical thinking skills to be able to come up with their own thoughts, their own ideas. And I think for what we do with our Youth Talk program, with Bridges of Understanding, is you get American kids talking with, kids in Egypt, for example, and they're challenging each other. What do you think about that? No, don't tell me what your teacher said to think about that, but what do you think about that? And you have an hour-and-a-half conversation going back and forth, challenging thinking. So I think if we can promote that and let educators see that it's okay to have critical thinkers in your classroom, and this is how you can foster a classroom that promotes critical thinking, and we can kind of change an existing system, or hopefully not change, but inspire, or whatever you want to call it. But if we can move that, I think we're really going to get somewhere. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, my name is Amal David. I was a supervisor of education for 32 years in Michigan. And I believe strongly that education comes beyond a textbook, but we were very eager. I wish I knew and other educators know about you and Bridges of Understanding. This is so crucial because I spent years and years seeing students, African Americans socializing together, Arab Americans together, Latinos together, and not enough understanding and integration and acceptance, and that created very, very tense situation. And I know that educational systems, they receive money from the federal government to promote understanding. So I wish maybe Casey would talk more about doing workshops for teachers, especially the non-bilingual teachers, mainstream teachers. We really need to do more of outreach.
Yeah, I mean, this educational component is very new to us. We're journalists, so we're trying to figure it out now. But I think we're very interested in all of that and finding people who we might work with who can help us on that front. It's one thing to have the curriculum, which is out there, it's wonderful, but, in the best case, there would be some way to help train. And I also would love the idea of figuring how to create a way to do more of these inter-country, international exchanges around the issues of girl rising. I mean, some of the things, for example, I've been working on this teaching guide right now for the educational release. And I'm trying to be very careful that we catch ourselves and not make assumptions, or not allow the students to make assumptions. For example, early marriage. I don't think we should assume it's bad. I happen to think it is bad. But I want to catch ourselves that we don't make that decision for the students. And I would like to see those kinds of conversations go on internationally about that sort of issue and all the other issues that, as you say, where the students are challenging each other. But then the challenge is also, as Tony said, is one-offs. What do you do? How do you build something that, if you do have that conversation, can extend itself beyond that day? At least, I don't know whether it's a semester or how, but how you integrate it into something much bigger. And part of what I hope we'll be able to do, if we find the manpower, resources, bandwidth, all of that kind of thing, is create a real educator community that will help us both develop ideas but also communicate directly amongst themselves internationally and domestically. The domestic component is very, very important to me as well. And I see, as I go to lots of screenings, I was just at a screening at a boarding school yesterday, and then 2 weeks ago at another school, and do those quite a lot. And to see these kids connect with the girls on screen is quite wonderful, because while their stories are so different in so many ways, and as I say, their cultures and thousands of miles apart, tens of thousands, sometimes the cultures and continents apart, they see themselves in these girls. And yesterday, what was so thrilling was the first time I went to a school where an audience was probably at least a third, if not a half, boys. And the boys were every bit as engaged. And that was really exciting to me, because to me that's very, very important. This isn't just about girls, it's about all of us, and it's so importantly about boys. So that was very exciting. But I'm just trying to understand this now and figure out how we really push forward in this way.
Sandy?
If I can just add 3 points to Casey's comments. First of all, Aspen has this public-private partnership that expands these 10 countries, and on our steering committee, both Cisco and Intel was so supportive of the production of Girls Rising. Both Cisco and Intel are heavily invested in the education space in the region. We're working very closely with them to expand their footprint and what they're doing in terms of Cisco has their network academy, Intel is doing Intel Teach, but what's the next iteration? What is the most useful roadmap, especially on these various issues that we're discussing? So they're heavily invested in a new landscape and architecture for the whole teaching and education landscape. I'm pleased Casey mentioned the issue of inclusiveness, whether it's on our own U.S. landscape or in the region. It's not just girls or women, it's boys and men, and it has to be conjoined, and it has to be inclusive, and everyone, all the stakeholders need to be at the table. My final point, and it's something also on the issue, I think you referenced it, in terms of what's out there. A lot of important work is being translated into Arabic, which is important. I mean, so many important scholarly work basically stopped. It wasn't translated, and there's a huge effort now to translate many scholarly works or even current new works or new books into Arabic, and those will be important teaching tools. And those are things that we talk about all the time and try to have as reference points.
If I can, I would like Pierre to also comment on the educator communities and maybe some aspects of how you're involved with others.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you asked me, so thank you very much. But back to you, a moment ago, honestly, I know I am biased, but the human touch does it all. Everything you've all said is, you have to have that there. But if you put left people and right people together and they just dance, they relax, there's music. You see, movement and music is international. There are no borders. And so your own personality comes out, whether you're brought up listening to Middle Eastern music or Latino music, or you bring your own sense of style, your own sense of feeling to it, and that feeling is passed on to your partner, and vice versa. And you say, thank you, partner. You move on, hello, new partner. Dance, thank you, hello, new partner. And so the whole class engages with each other in a way that no 2 + 2 can teach you.
Will that keyword?
Let me tell you, I think that goes somewhere else. It's like line dancing, It's not the same. You can do that at the end for sugar, because, if you go to the Middle East, you'll see line dancing, here we have the Michael Jackson, type of thing. But let them touch each other first. And that, for me, again, I'm sorry, I'm biased, but with all due respect, it worked for me. I was very shy, didn't want to speak. They made fun of me at school, having lived in Jordan, coming to England, and the British are very, hoity-toity with my accent. But dancing just made my life for me, and so this is what I have brought over to the children, and that really works.
So how do you deal with the culture? When you said you were very...
Well, as I said, it's a ripple effect. Meaning that, you start with the ones who want to. And then if you're a girl, you're a boy, you don't want to dance, okay, no problem. You can sit down for a moment. But then that boy and girl are tapping their feet. And if I may also mention to you that we've had some letters from children in New York City, where we have quite a few Muslim children in Brooklyn. We go to our schools, And one girl was part of the class, and we asked them to write about what they see, because they cannot participate in the class to dance with the boy. And she was tapping her feet and said, I would love to dance, but my father won't let me. And so we cannot, impose ourselves onto your culture. But these kids are part of the international scene. So I love it when parents allow their children to be, let's call it, international, but not to go away from their own culture either. You're just adding to your culture. But it takes time.
I think it's important we keep talking about young people that we...
All people love to shake it.
Because they're sitting right here, and I'd really love to get their comments and opinions on everything.
Why don't you use a mic?
Hi, I'm Gonya. I'm from Egypt. I come from Oasis International School. The reason why I'm here is because last year I wrote an essay, something that has to do with the individual contest, and I won the award. That's why I was invited to the conference today. I think all this is really important. I wasn't aware of all this. I wasn't conscious of what was happening. I hear from all these wonderful people about their life experiences and what they did and how they helped understanding between Americans and Arab, and I really feel so privileged to be here today. I think that this conference is really important, but I would also like to suggest that maybe in the future we might do something like this, but between young people from America and from North Africa and the Middle East, where they can actually come together and have a conference on a topic involving both sides. And actually, it's the whole purpose of this conference is not just to make a resolution or to make something. It's while collaborating and communicating together that they understand each other, and also they help people with the resolutions to seek understanding. So we just kind of do so many things when we let young people collaborate together, because they have the power to influence and to educate other generations. So I think this is really important. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, I am Nicholas Carmelagos. I'm from Edwardsburg, Michigan. And I don't even know where to begin. This whole program really just makes you feel good about yourself. You go into it and you don't really know what to expect. Some kids in the class were just kind of iffy, didn't really care. But I went into it and with an open mind, and I really got a lot out of it. I learned a lot about the Middle East, and it's not so much that the Americans are biased. A lot of people just really don't know what to expect. They hear all these headlines and stuff, and like we talked about earlier, they don't really go further than that. They just see that. And I feel like this program really allows you it gives you the opportunity to go in deeper, dive in deeper, find out more about the culture, both sides, them for us and us for them. It taught me leadership skills. We did a collaborative project, and ours was about pollution. And our partner school, and our school in Edwardsburg, we came up with a big tree, and basically it just had different solutions to help global warming. And not the issue of global warming, but just the concept of working together and collaborating. And I feel like as individual nations, we're so focused on competing with one another, when really we should be collaborating, because when we collaborate, we can come together and we can truly do great things. Thank you.
That was excellent, and both of you can apply for internships at the Aspen Institute. I'm getting the cut it off signal, so thank you everyone, and I think Faisal's going to make a few remarks, so we'll stay up here for a few minutes.
Please welcome for closing remarks, Faisal Al-Jabari.